We are ready for the November 12th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Before we start, I just want to acknowledge it is Veterans Day, and we do have some veterans in the room, so I'd like to acknowledge. I know of at least two. Are there any others? You're a vet?
Going back to.
Thank you very much. Happy Veterans Day to all. And we'll get into our order of business here. The first item is to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes of October 8th. So I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
A motion by Bartlett. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jensen. Any discussion or corrections on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Next item is council representative report. Alderperson Bartlett.
Council last month, they approved the annexation of the portion of the town of Dunkirk and Rutland that we talked about last month. It came through here first. See, they approved some of the certified map and extraterritorial jurisdiction things. They also wanted to send, they were appreciative of all the work that was done on the downtown overlay district work. I know that was mainly Todd and the staff, so appreciate all the work on that. We had the first reading of that, and the second reading should be tomorrow night. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Next item is the staff report. Planning Director Shield.
Contained in your packet is just a few bullet points of projects that are ongoing. The one that I'm most closely involved in is a public works facility that continues to move along well. Anticipating building takeover just before the first of the year, so that we'll begin moving our public operations into that facility over the course of a couple of months after that.
Any questions?
I could just highlight one last
Oh,
thing.
sure.
Solar is an integral part of that project on the roof. The solar is in place. It's not been activated, but the panels are in place. You won't be able to see them likely from the road, but they're very low profile, and they sit on top of the white TPO roof, and I think that'll be a very nice addition to the project.
Ronnie, the marathon site, is that project completely done now? Is it back in the hands of the RDA? Do you know that property?
They did not move forward with closing. The offer to purchase was expected to be closed on by October 31st. That did not happen. The RDA has not yet received the release of the purchase agreement, but for all practical purposes, that project's not moving forward at this point.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the report? Hearing none, that takes us to a request by Kathy Camp of Wisconsin Partnership for Housing Development to rezone the property at 1125 West Main Street from SR4 Single Family Residential to MR10 Multifamily Residential. Anything before we start the public hearing?
Just for the audience, this particular property is on the corner of West Main Street and Pine Street. The Planning Commission and City Council have acted on previously some certified survey maps to split off a two-story single-family house that was on a larger parcel at one point and has now been removed from the parcel. The parcel one is the parcel that's shown on the screen is planned for the public hearing tonight.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll close the regular meeting, and then we'll open up a public hearing. And at the public hearing, if anybody wants to come up to the podium, they can just state their name and their address for the record, and then we just ask you to limit your comments to a few minutes if you could, and then we'll go into a recommendation afterwards. So we'll open for the public hearing, and is anybody here to speak tonight? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Camp, and I have the request for zoning in. As you know, we purchased the property, that entire parcel, lot 1 and 2, in late 2017 and divided the property. The house that's on lot 2 is under renovation and should be completed by the end of 2019. But we are requesting a change in zoning for lot 1 so that we can build 4 units of affordable rental housing on that site. And so the change would allow us to do that. I think that that change is consistent with the long-term plan for the city. And what we would intend to do on that property is construct 4 units of housing in one building. It would be designed so that it fits into the neighborhood and the aesthetics of the homes around it. We hope to include 2 two-bedrooms and 2 three-bedroom units in that building. WPHD will maintain ownership of the units and will be responsible for the maintenance and care of the units. Local case management will be supported or will be provided by START. It's important really to understand the issue, to know who's going to be living in these units. In Dane County, in order to afford an average 2-bedroom apartment, you need to earn almost $19 an hour. Clearly, there are many jobs in Stoughton and throughout Dane County that don't pay that much, including those who work in area nursing homes, or teachers' aides, or child care workers, or those employed in the service and retail industry. When a family pays more than they can afford for housing, which is generally considered to be about 30% of your income, and they experience any kind of crisis, they might lose their housing because they have to choose between taking care of a sick child or paying their rent. And as a result, some of these working families might lose their housing because they can't afford the rent. These affordable rental units will provide an opportunity for these families to be able to remain in the community and rent a unit. So these are affordable rental housing. They'll be permanent housing for the people who want to live there. And as I said, supportive services will be provided to them if they need them so that they can maintain stable housing while they're there. So thanks.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hey.
I'm Cindy Thompson, and I work at the Stoughton Senior Center for the Stoughton Area Resource Team, and I'm here to support the program. As you heard Kathy mention, the START program would be providing that case management to those families. Case management is essential to working with folks in hopes to help them gain self-sufficiency and independence. It would be provided to them to help them with goal setting, regular check-ins as they would prefer and as they would like with our program. And I think that that is a huge piece that not every housing program is able to provide to folks. And I just wanted to recognize the support from the Stoughton Area Resource Team that we would be providing that case management to those who are interested. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Muller, 208 North Jerickson, Stoughton. And I'm also here to speak in support of this recommendation. Stoughton is known as a community that comes together to help each other. You know, this happened after the tornado, happened with all the volunteers coming together to renovate the youth center and having organizations here in Stoughton like START and Seniors in Need. And I feel like this proposed project for this apartment building for 4 families would be another example of helping those in our community. It's permanent housing, and it's for Stoughton families that are struggling financially, families who, even though they're working, are not able to make enough to pay rent in this time of few apartment vacancies and high rent. It's a collaborative project with Wisconsin Partnership for Housing Development and START and the Housing Advocacy Team of Stoughton. WHPD has a long track record of working on this type of project in other communities. They've been in existence since 1985, and they will be in charge of construction and then will take over property management as the families move in. START also has a good track record here in Stoughton. They were formed in 2003, and as Cindy Thompson said, they will be offering the case management to families as needed. So I feel that we have a sustainable plan and one that meets the needs of some of our community members, and I urge you to recommend passage of this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sid.
So my name is Sid Boersma. I live at 243 East McKinley Street in Stoughton. I am a member of HATS and a member of City Council. I'm here just to wholeheartedly support this project. I think it's something that Stoughton needs and has needed for a number of years. I'm so pleased that This is coming up at planning, and would ask for your support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Swadley, Commissioners. Yeah, I'm Jordan Tilson. I own J&T Developments and Pups Unleashed Dog Daycare. That is the lot directly next to this development. It's not that we are against it. We just strongly advise that as going through the planning process, which we'll be keeping an eye on, that a sound barrier is developed between the two lots. We have done a sound study on that. We've gone 3 years without any noise complaints. We do have a good training program for the dogs, but when we had applied for our conditional use application, we had done a sound study of the area and how the sound of the dog barks would reflect in the area. That open lot would be in direct of, some increased noise with that, and we just want to make sure that the developers would build some kind of sound barrier or help to increase reducing the decibels of a dog bark that would happen. Much like people who choose to live by highways or by airports, there is noise that will come from that. And while yet, like I said, we have not had a noise complaint in our 4 years of business, really hate to see police officers and emergency personnel have to be taken away from actual real duties than to have to try and handle noise complaints from the two tenants or the tenants on the different lot, causing any kind of issues with that. So, yeah, it's not that we're against any kind of building. We're happy to see this, happy to see something like this come in, but we're also just concerned with something so that we can live together mutually in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on this topic? Oh, okay. You want to speak? We'll wait for you. Come on up.
My name's Bobby Fonz. I just want to say I think this is great. I think, as people have said before, Stoughton has come together as a community. I think we need this. There is a call for this, and I'm just in total support of it. And what I heard Kathy say, this is in your long-term plan anyway to make it an M10. So I think this would be a great time for the board to approve it and show that Stoughton really stands behind their citizens. So I'm all for it.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Last call in the public hearing. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and then we'll reopen for the recommendation to the city council. There is an ordinance in the packet to be considered. And anybody like to start the conversation? Alderperson Jensen.
Just a question for Rodney. No issues, nothing, no problems.
No, we outlined that in our staff review letter, there was nothing that stood out as being.
Then I'd make the motion to approve.
Okay, so there'll be a motion to recommend approval to the council. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Bartlett. Is there any discussion on this? Go ahead, Matt.
I guess I'd just like to, bring up the neighboring owner's concern about having some kind of noise reduction. And I don't know if Kathy, if that's been looked at or not, maybe some trees or fencing or something in between the properties.
I mean, we certainly haven't done the design work for the site as of yet, but I appreciate those comments and I'm certain that we'll take those into consideration. There's already a tree line there that's pretty substantial, and I think adding to that would be sufficient for some sort of fence.
Okay, great. And can I ask, how do you get your tenants? Are they all from Stoughton, or is it open to anyone from Dane County, or restricted to a certain, just Stoughton, certain income levels?
Well, they'll have to be under 60% of the area median income, so that's the primary selection criteria. And the way we're looking at it is we're looking for referrals from START for people to live in those units. So we'll depend on them to refer people to us, which I would assume would largely be from Stoughton or within the Stoughton School District.
And I don't know if you guys can see me here. Our eligibility requirement. The eligibility requirement for our program-specific Stoughton Area Resource Team as it exists now are for Stoughton area residents who are under age 55 residing in our school district here in town. In order for me to be providing case management to those folks right now, they have to have resided in Stoughton for at least 30 days within this past year in order for our program to help them. And for this housing program for HATS, we would be the main source of referrals to those people in those units. Does that answer everything?
Do you have a follow-up for that?
Is preference given to families with children? Is that?
Right, so the units are designed for families.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so we have a motion and a second on the ordinance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Thank you very much. This will go on to the city council in 2 weeks.
2 weeks from tomorrow.
2 weeks from tomorrow will be the first reading.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Item number 6, we had a request for design approval for a new sign on 135 West Main Street. I believe that's been withdrawn. Is that accurate?
Unless somebody's here to speak otherwise. Hearing none.
So I don't think we're going to act on this tonight.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll pass on this and we'll go to item number 7, which is a request for design approval for Araya Yellowbird for a new sign at 208 West Main Street. And there should be some information in the packet. You want to get us started on this? And I see her out in the crowd.
It's in the Downtown Design Overlay District. That's why it's before us tonight. Materials are in the packet, and the applicant's here. If there's any questions, I'm sure she'll be willing to assist with answering them.
Any questions or motions or anything?
Question.
Sure. Come on up.
Just so I'm clear on the design, now, with the picture right now, you have the white background here on the upper, is that going to stay white then? And then you have three-dimensional letters that will be attached or fixed over this white space up above? Okay. And the colors of the letters are this kind of color here?
It's the brown trim.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve?
I'll second.
Motion by Bartlett and a second by Caravello. Any questions on this one? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Thank you. Item number 8, discuss potential ordinance amendments. What do we have? Hopefully not too many.
There's a bunch.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
So in your packet is really, these are not in your packet for action at this point. They're really to begin the discussion. You can see we've got about 28 items in the zoning code that warrant some different consideration, either been raised by staff or public, that have caused conflict or have differing references throughout the code. And I don't know how you want to proceed, but certainly there are a number of these that are pretty involved to discuss. We're just trying to expose to the commission all the issues that we think that we need to be working through. And we're looking for some guidance on how you want to start to tackle some of these and move forward with them. Greg's got a point.
Alderperson Jensen.
One at a time.
One at a time? Do you have any particular one you want to start with?
I'll ask this. Has Matt had an opportunity to render his opinion on any of this yet?
Absolutely not. The city attorney hasn't been involved, other than awareness on some of these that we've, during some of our reviews, that have cropped up and created some gray areas for clarification. And so he's aware of several of these that have come up because of those reasons.
And some of these aren't necessarily unique to Stoughton.
Right.
So there may be an effort to do some collaboration with other municipalities, but I'm not really sure until we get into it how many are, are going to be Stoughton specific, and how many of them we can at least share some information and some opinions on before we get too deep into them. And I think that's something that Attorney Dragney could certainly help us sort through. I know some of this was brought up at a conference I attended a couple weeks ago, and especially on the first one. Is it the first one or the second one? On anything that involves conditional use permit, there's even amongst attorneys some differing opinions on how some of these things might be interpreted. So some of this might take a little while in order to get a definitive opinion on. And I think that there's work being done as we speak on some of these topics. I think from a staffing, I guess we're trying to prioritize. And if you have any thoughts about that, or we can at least put a process together to help us prioritize them, because we're not going to, resolve all these at one meeting, but certainly over the course of the next, several months, we'd like to at least, start chipping away at them. Commissioner Barman?
In terms of a plan of attack, I'm guessing that the only one of these that might have audience participation would be the last one, because we had an email that was submitted on the increase in the number of hen chicks from 4 to 6. So I guess I would suggest that we maybe, since it doesn't matter what order we take them, maybe just jump ahead and see if there's anyone here who wanted to be part of that conversation, and then move on to the rest afterwards, rather than making someone have to sit through all of these.
Sure.
Just recognize this isn't established as a public hearing, so we're not taking testimony necessarily about the
But
marriage.
even if they're just here
right.
to listen,
Understood, fully.
just as a courtesy,
Yep,
because
agreed.
it might take us a while to go through the rest of them.
Yeah, and I don't know how specific we can get into it because of the way we have it posted. It's kind of a general conversation.
Yeah.
It's not specific to one. So I don't know if we can really make, we're not going to create an ordinance tonight, but we can
no, I understand.
certainly, at least begin a process, I
I think we
guess.
can at least direct staff to adjust to, correct the wording, I guess would be the right way to say it, change the wording of the ordinance to allow for the 6 rather than the 4.
So I don't think the audience could hear you, Greg.
Okay.
So, but
I said-
your
I-
comments
I
were.
think we can simply just direct staff to change the ordinance to allow 6 rather than 4. It'd be a very simple way to do it. and
So
then
you'd
just
you'd
bring
like
that
us to
forward.
bring back an ordinance and
And
go
bring-
through the public hearing process to consider changing the ordinance to allow for 6 chickens.
Okay,
That would fix that one very simply.
okay. All right. The one before that, Attorney Dragney already has some direction. He just hasn't gotten to it yet, the one on the bees. He's been, working on Chapter 78 and some of the other assignments that we've given him. So I know that one, he has a file on it, so it's on his radar. I think what we'll have to do is if we select some others, we'll have to determine whether or not, that one needs to be bumped, or, what order we want him to focus on these ordinances. Because at the end of the day, he's going to have to review what we've worked on. And, so for example, do you want us to work on the chicken one and have him give his opinion on that before the bee one?
I think the bee one has been, that's been lingering for probably close to a year, if not more. I think that just out of common courtesy, we should put that one to bed first.
Do that one first? Okay.
So before we bring back the chicken one, you'd want to have the bee ordinance
Yep. to prioritize it for the attorney technique.
Okay?
Okay. Anything that you feel that we really need to, something where we have a pressing issue?
I think I've explained to commissions in the past that it's really challenging when the time when these situations become apparent is when you're doing a plan review. And for the first time, you've now identified either a conflict or an area that's not clearly defined. And what's most uncomfortable is you're trying to reconcile that to the best of our ability, and some of them are contentious issues. And on here, you'll see that there's some discussion about large development regulations. This community put a lot of effort into, if you will, big box standards, but really that's the large development regulations. But there certainly are issues that need to be reconciled in the ordinances to make them clear and understandable, and even maybe be revisited as to whether they're appropriate. So when you look at group development and large developments, those are issues that I think are important to clarify for future economic development purposes. There's just a number of issues in all of these. All these are important to somebody because they've either been, I won't say, penalized by them, but they've bumped up against them, and we had to make a determination that might not have been a clear one. So these are ones that we'd like to continue to work through with. We've not established a priority list as you're seeking, but I think initially what I heard is probably a good start. Tackle the bee issue, followed by the chickens, and then have us as staff maybe offer some priorities going forward beyond that. You're exactly right. A number of these are deep enough that they will require both policy decision interest, but also legal interest in how it's crafted. So these are time-consuming items. You can recognize when we went through the deliberation on the downtown design overlay. I hope they don't all rise to that level, but you can see the complexities of some of these things that we're trying to obviously shape the character of the community through your zoning code, but doing it in a fair, well-articulated manner so that everybody understands what the regulations are, even before they're approved, so that when they're approved, they're defensible and understandable for the public. So that's an important aspect of this. Aside from staff putting together a priority list, we'd certainly encourage you to just take a glance at these, see if you're aware of any situations that might warrant more immediate consideration, and we'd certainly like to consider that. One of these items is related to fencing and easements and the like. If there's one permit that's the most difficult for us to deal with, it's fencing. It's the most time-consuming and challenging both for the applicant to understand what the regulations are, because oftentimes they may need to actually hire a surveyor to locate their property stakes. So it's a very, very involved process, and we want to make sure that we talk through whether that's appropriate and what level of burden we place on folks to achieve certain fencing situations. And not that that rises to a priority, but I'm just talking about frequency. That's one, of course, not this time of year now, but it is one that we see a great deal of interest in the public about.
Go ahead.
Ronnie, do you have more information on item 10, the official map? When was that last done?
So state law offers an official mapping process where you can actually map roadways in your extraterritorial jurisdiction, essentially. There's some pretty involved legal aspects of that process, regulatory takings and the like that might impact whether we'd actually pursue an official mapping effort. Just for edification, as part of our comprehensive plan, we still outline anticipated roadway segment and continuances of major corridors. So while we might not officially map them, we still in practice work through the development process to require those areas to be extensions of roadways that we know need to exist.
Is there any designation for how often that should be updated? Should it be tied to the comp plan, or should it be every 10, 15 years? Or is there anything designating that?
I think it's reasonable to assume that it could be done on about a 10-year basis, likely with your comprehensive plan. Generally, comprehensive plan major updates are on a 10-year basis, slightly after the census material becomes available is kind of a normal process. That's not to say you can't update, and we have updated our comprehensive plan for certain portions in between those 10-year increments.
Any other comments or priorities? I mean, I think what we'll attempt to do is we'll start out with at least the first two, maybe talk a little bit about the fencing, and then dive into some of these. We don't want to put them all on the agenda and be here till 10 o'clock at night, 6 months in a row just to fight through them. I think we want to try to pick them off one or two at a time if it makes sense, or at least get them going and find out what additional information you need in order to make a recommendation to the council. Go ahead.
Are there any on here, like I'm looking at 25 and 20, item 25 and item 24, building inspectors are designated as staff and secretary of the planning commission and so on. I mean, what is it that we need to do there? Is it something that we need to just revise or verbiage in there?
Yeah, I mean, you can see some low-hanging fruit here. Those seem like ones that are fairly straightforward. That actually isn't a Chapter 78 zoning change, but it is something that we can modify going forward, and we'd likely include it in some other.
Electrical certifications.
Yes.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would suggest that we,
Take some of those.
Yep, fix that low-hanging fruit and get rid of that as soon as we can too.
Okay.
Understood. Thank you.
Go ahead.
And Rodney, this is a lot of staff time with all these. Is there any of this in your budget, or I know it's too late for 2019 budget, but I think next year we have to look at putting some time, because some of this calls for calling in experts, and some will be software and some other related items. But
Thank you for that acknowledgement. Certainly, the 2019 budget does include some capital outlay money for some zoning code updates, but there's specifically some state law changes that require some additional reporting from the planning department that is being imposed on all communities related to building permit fees and housing starts and certain aspects of that will probably incur some consulting fee expenses as well. But there might be an opportunity to utilize some of those funds to help with some of these more delicate ones.
I think we refer to those as unfunded mandates, and it seems to be a trend here the last several years. So, we just deal with them the best we can, but we don't have an abundance of staff. In fact, the planning department has been running pretty lean here the last few months due to people being out, and Rodney has been extremely flexible with his schedule and his time in order to accommodate as much as one person possibly can. We're starting to get back at full speed again, so it's going to take us a while to get caught up, but we'll certainly try to keep things moving here as best as we can. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So unless there's anything else, we'll work on them and start bringing some things back at the next meeting. And then for those that have interest in any of them, certainly can call or email us, or with information or requests if there's something they'd like to see that we didn't touch on tonight, and to make that a priority. Otherwise, at least those two will be on as a future agenda item, as well as anything else that either comes up or anything else we think we'll have time to take on at the next meetings. So anything else you have for future agenda items that is not part of this? No? There's a motion to adjourn
Second?
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Did you go to schools for veteran ceremony? Pardon? You go to the schools for veteran ceremony? Or did you talk to Sid?
I had to work this morning, otherwise I would have been up there.
I didn't make it either, I was trying to. Police Fox Parade. I've never been to one of those. Even the Legion, I haven't been in the meeting. I did, yeah. Sign up in Wisconsin. I think they must have low membership or something.